Hello, and welcome back to the Elevate Your Running podcast. This is Coach Sarah, and today I am here with running coach Nick Klastava. Hey, Nick, how's it going?
Hey, Sarah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Hey, yeah, thanks so much for agreeing to do this. It was so much fun. It was literally just a few days ago. I was on Threads and I saw that you posted this really interesting question about overhyped running topics and why they matter and maybe why we're kind of missing the target on these topics because they're talked about all day, every day. They're overhyped. Every running influencer is talking about them. So today we're talking about those topics, why they matter, and kind of how you can add them into your training to make sure that it's working for you. Maybe not necessarily what you've been hearing across Instagram reels and TikToks and all the things.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. It was fun. It was a fun topic. I was thinking about it one morning and just like all these things we've heard. And yeah, we'll dive into more. It'll be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun. And it was a really awesome experience too, because I have known you through like the running community and seeing you online. And one of my athletes that I coach is a coach for Running Explained. And you are part of the Running Explained team. But would you like to give more of an introduction of who you are, what you do, all the good stuff?
Yeah, sure. I'm Nicholas Dava. Originally from New Jersey, living in Maryland now, just outside Baltimore. I'm a runner for 28 years, 29 years. I started in high school in New Jersey. I ran a D1 collegiate school in New Jersey called Monmouth University. And then I took 8 years off from running and thought I was done. And in 2010, we moved from New Jersey to Maryland. And I said, hey, I want to lose some weight. So I started running again. And I had this goal to run a marathon before 30, and I was 29 and a half. So signed up for a marathon. Didn't know what I was doing at all because I hadn't been running 8 years. And in college, my longest race was a 10K. My longest run in college, I think, was 10 or 12 miles, maybe max. And so started doing long runs. Didn't know what a gel was. I didn't know a lot of things. And so I got to the race and then I was like, oh, well, I'm a competitive runner. Why don't I just hit that BQ thing? And it was like 3:10, I thought at the time, but it had just changed, like they do at times. And so I
Yeah.
walked to the starting line and they're like, oh, no, it's 3:05 now. And I'm like, all right, I'll just run that. Newsflash, I didn't. At mile 20, I blew up. And the last 10K was rough, but I got hooked back into it. And I met a local running group in Maryland. And it was hard because I was running with people who hadn't stopped after college and they were very fast. And I was like 8 years removed. So I fought with all that stuff of like comparing to yourself, comparing to others, comparing to where you used to be. And it slowed me down a ton. And, so a lot of my journey was getting back. And it took me till about
Mm,
2018, having two kids, having my life being totally different, and accepting that, oh, I can't do what I used to do. And, my workout paces are going to be slower, and that's okay. I have a job and all these other things. And so I started breaking all my PRs around the end of 2018, 2019. And was more stressed than ever. My mileage was lower than it ever had been, but my workouts were feeling better and my races were top notch. So it was just a fun reminder. And then so I started becoming a coach in 2018
mm.
and been doing it about 7 years now. Coach people from 5-hour marathoners to women who run in the Olympic trials and love it. It's so much fun. And recently I just joined up with Running Explained last fall and then quit my job 2 weeks ago. So we're super scary, but we're trying this out and we're gonna see how it goes.
My gosh, I love this so much. I think we could have an entire episode just on that intro and all the things. I love Running Explained. I love Elizabeth Scott. For anyone who's listening to this podcast, you may know Elizabeth from her own podcast, the Running Explained podcast. She has an incredible Instagram account. And she's also been on the Elevate Your Running podcast a few times talking about heart rate training, the return to running, and her process through that as she was going through that personally just last year. And they're both really great episodes. It's a phenomenal team to be part of. I want to circle back to your first marathon though, because I think a lot of us are thinking, oh my gosh, that's me. I feel like I also was in that space of like, you jump into running, into training, you think you're going in to train for your first marathon. How bad can it be is kind of the mindset. And you don't really understand about proper fueling or proper hydration. Did you train for that first marathon over that like 6 month window of time that you had before you turned 30, or what was kind of like the training process like?
Yeah, I think I gave myself about 4 to 5 months,
Nice.
and it was hard, right? So, I was very competitive in high school and college, and I'd just come back, and so, in my mind, I'm thinking, "Okay, well, I can," "I used to be able to do this stuff, I can do it again," right? And so that's, hard lesson in learning your ego, right? But I did fueling information in 2011 when I ran this marathon wasn't what it is nowadays, so
Yeah.
there was really one option most likely for everyone, which was goo as a gel option, and like the science wasn't what it is, and it was like, oh, take these, and Goo would say take it 15 minutes before you need it, and I'd be like, I don't know when I need it, so I don't really know what you're asking me. But so it was just a lot. I think I only took 3 gels that
Yeah.
whole race. It was wine glass,
Ooh.
so it was a fun marathon, and the medal was great. But yeah, right around mile 20, I had been chatting the whole time too with people. I was like, oh, this doesn't feel that bad, we're moving along, like I'm gonna do this. And then at mile 20 was just like, well, see you later. And everyone just disappeared. And it just was downhill from there. So yeah, it was, my training was suspect. Like, I mean, my longest run
Yeah.
was like 15 miles, maybe. It was new to me. And so
Yeah.
I just, you underestimate the marathon. I probably should have started with a half because I hadn't done one of those yet either. But, it was just like, this is a fun little thing. And I thought I'd just do one and be done. But like, the marathon, it pulls you back in, right? And all of a sudden we're back and we're fully engaged in running like I was before.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. I went into my first marathon thinking kind of the same thing, like one and done. Or, I wanted to qualify for Boston. I then did and thought I'm going to run Boston and then I'm done with marathons. But you're 1,000% right. It has this ability to pull you back in, even after a hard race, even after you cross the finish line and you call your sister, this is me, call your sister to tell her you're not running another marathon again. It's like all those feelings come up. And I think what's really fun about that distance in particular is that we can all kind of bond over those moments. Our first marathon, the lessons learned, kind of how we feel in that last 10K, what we're feeling when we cross the line, all the things. Fueling has come a long way. Fueling is so incredible right now and is arguably like the needle mover among athletes. And I think it's definitely one of the contributing factors to why the marathon is getting faster and why Boston keeps lowering their time standards and making it more difficult to get in, is because people are fueling and they're fueling well and they're like really taking it seriously. And it's so fun to see people's potential. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, the difference when I ran that first marathon, I ran 3:11 at Wine Glass, and to when I ran my 2:30 marathon in 2018 at CIM, it was 40 minutes was thousands, 10,000 miles probably, and 6 to 7 more gels. Right, those were the really biggest differences, and just learning,
Yeah.
right. But like that those changes happened. I showed up a lot over the next 7 years, and I fueled a lot more. And still, even when I ran Boston last month, I fueled more than I did at CIM in 2018. Because now we have better gel options that are high carb. So instead of having to take like 3 20 carb gels an hour, 4 to get to 80 grams, you can take two, 40-gram gels. Like there are more abundance of these higher carb gels, which make it a little easier to fuel as long as you can handle getting it down.
Oh my gosh, 100%. And that's one of the big reasons that, I think we both as coaches encourage our athletes to fuel during training. Let's train your stomach. Let's figure out what's going to work for you, especially during those marathon long runs with the quality work where you can really play around to see what works, what doesn't work. I'm curious to know, what was your fueling plan for Boston? Because offline we were talking about how you started a bit back. You were in wave 4. You got to run with an athlete that you coached. And so you were running with them. Can you kind of talk us through, the time goal or what you ended up running with this athlete, and also maybe how you fueled? Because my thinking is you ran quite a bit slower than what you're capable of, but you still fueled in a way that supported you if you were out there racing.
Yeah, I took a Gellery 5K, which for us was around 25 minutes maybe. Trying to do math. 20, yeah, somewhere around there. I'll just go with that.
Yeah.
And I took a 40-gram SIS beta gel was
Yeah.
what I was taking a lot of. And so, all the way up until mile 22 or 23, and then, like, I sort of, the wheels came off a little bit for both of us because we sort of ran really hard early on trying to pass people, which is tough. Wave 4, they don't really, so earlier waves they seem to seed you based on your qualifying time. Wave 4, they just kind of throw people in who don't have a qualifying time, whether they got in through the Abbott program or charity or
Oh, I see.
sponsors or whatever, right? And so we were, I think, corral 4, which was like, 5,000 people back, and people started walking a couple miles in, and it's
Yeah.
fine. But, like, so for us, we were just weaving a lot. So I ended up taking, I think, 7 gels probably by the whole race. And yeah, we were probably wanting to run a little faster. We took a little bit of energy running early. It got a little warmer as the race went on. And the other thing I noticed was the crowds definitely thin out for wave 4, which is kind of sad to see, but also understandable because how many hours can you stand out and cheer? But it definitely was,
Yeah.
as someone who's been in wave 1 before, the crowds were not as deep as they are and for wave 4 people.
Yeah, that's so interesting, and it's something that, I it's tough to see it happen, but I could imagine, like, I know I've been on the side of being the spectator, and then as you see your people come through, whether it's your athletes or your friends, you may say, okay, now I'm going to move to the next spot to see them, or I may go to our meeting location after the race to get a table to celebrate. Maybe we're getting food or drink or whatever. So I can definitely see that happening. Did you still feel like it was a solid Boston experience, or did you feel it was just a little bit watered down because of that?
No, it's still good. I mean, my athlete loved it. It was his
Yeah.
first time doing it, and he loved the crowds.
Ooh,
And I don't think he knows what it would look like if it was a little earlier, but yeah,
that's true.
but he loved it. It was great. I mean, the crowds were in the areas where they're supposed to be. They were really really deep. Yeah, it was still it was a great experience. He loved it. I always love Boston. I think no race shows up like Boston. I put that on Threads, and New York City people came at me, and I'm like, it's fine, but, like, New York City's so big, like, there could be 7 events going on at once, including the marathon, and no half the city would know. Boston, every single person in the whole entire state knows it's Boston Marathon Monday, and either they're showing up because they're off from work, or, if you're in the town, everyone asks you if you're running. In New York City, you could just walk around and people are like, why are you here? So that's like the big difference. Nothing, no knock on New York City. It's just Boston. The
Yeah.
marathon day is the day.
Yeah, I mean, that is such a strong and valid point. I haven't experienced New York yet, so I feel like, I haven't quite gave my opinion on the two because I haven't experienced both of them, but it feels kind of similar to like a Michael Jordan and a LeBron James. Like, who is greater? Who is better? I don't know, they're both pretty great, but I can see what you're saying about Boston and how the entire city shuts down. Everyone comes out. It's a big party and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Well, okay. We're going to segue into the topic for today, which is the overhyped running topics. First up is you know it, you love it. It is the art of easy running and recovery runs. Now, this could fall into like zone 2 running. I think we talk about this until our face is blue. I think, especially last year, it felt like that zone 2, the easy running was all over the place. It was on podcast topics, it was on Instagram Reels, it was on TikToks. Your coaches were talking about it. It was everywhere. Nick, do you want to give us a breakdown on what exactly easy running is? And then we'll segue into some of the other things about it.
Yeah, so a good training block consists of a couple things, right? You have your easy runs. Those are the kind of the runs in between the filler runs, the runs that are kind of building up your muscles and your running economy, right? And so then you have speed work, most people do, or strides, right? You do that one. Most people do that once a week, and then you do long runs, which are building up your endurance, and also it can be at easy pace or faster paces, right? And so easy paces, someone who started this sport in high school and college, it was always just, okay, well, we're going to do a workout today, and then tomorrow we're going to run easy. And it's just an effort. No one's out there like clocking us how fast we're going. In high school and college, I would run way too fast on easy days. And then all I do is suffer on my workout the next day because I couldn't run the workout because we decided to run easy pace. And I'll just say this, at like 5:30 pace for some ridiculous reason. And then, the next day in the workout, we would die, and that would be our own fault. So, when zone two became this big topic, it's sort of when Instagram and Reels blew up, and like that became the fun thing to talk about. And so we'd make a reel, you'd say zone two, it'd blow up, you wouldn't know what you were saying, but everyone else was doing it. And then people would do their runs, right? And they would just be like, okay, well, my watch has 5 zones, and I'm going to make sure 100% in zone two for my run. I remember a time when people would share their workouts, 2017, 2018, and they would put like all their splits in their story, and they'd put like X's or a circle next to it, whether they hit the pace exactly right or wrong. It's a whole nother wild topic, right? Because
Yeah.
you don't fail your workout, and like an X meaning you failed your workout if it was supposed to be 3 minute pace, but you ran 30, or sorry, 6 minute pace and you ran 601 or something like that. And you'd be like, oh, I failed. I hit all my splits at one. It's like, that's not how this works, right? Our body doesn't know these fine details like that. Same thing with easy running. Like it's not about a number. It's not about a pace, right? I think we all get stuck in these round numbers. So we're like, oh, I don't want to run any slower than 8 minute pace. I'm easy runner, 9 minute pace or 10 minute pace. I'm easy runner. Why? Well, I just don't want to run that slow. There is no such thing as too slow. The too slow for an easy run is when you chop up your stride so much that you can't, do your normal stride, right? Like you're half striding, you're uncomfortable, you're not doing your normal motion. That's when you're going too slow, and that's like, oh, that's the limit. Outside of that, it does not matter, right? The whole point is to put some time on your feet between runs and then to go work hard on your hard days. I think the other term that kind of got lost in this all is easy days easy, hard days hard. And then it turned into, well, just run easy all the time somehow. And no one's ever saying that, but somehow we took like that term with zone two and we thought, okay, well, all I do is got to run zone two every single day and I'll get faster. And it's like, no, you need to run fast sometimes too. You need to run hard, but you also need to run easy. Like there is a periodization that exists where all these things are in part of your training log, and they all work together to help you become fit. And that's how we get through a training block, right? Because again, it's not about 1 week. It's not about some perfect workout. It's not about any of that. It's about the consistency you can have over a training block and then over multiple training blocks all stacked
Mm.
together. So one day isn't making the difference. Slow down your easy day because you're thinking about your goal 3 years from now. And this day is just helping you be ready for your hard day, which gets you ready for your next hard day, which gets you ready for your race, which gets you ready for your next training block, which gets you ready for the year after that. Right. So, yeah, that's the way I like to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way to look at it. It doesn't get to be the same exact thing every single day. And what I loved the most about what you said is that, easy isn't a pace, it's a feeling. And every day that feeling is going to be a little bit different. What do you suggest to an athlete who is going through, let's say they're in a marathon training build and they're running 6 days a week and they have, that Wednesday workout, they have that Saturday long run with marathon pace. How many days a week do you think they should be running quote unquote easy in that zone two? And then what are those other days comprised of?
Yeah, for most of my marathon runners, so also like to think of like the day after a long run workout. And
Mm-hmm.
so for a lot of my runners, we'll do for marathon specifically, we'll do workouts inside a long run. And I know that's not something a lot of runners have done, especially newer runners, where they just long runs are just at some one certain pace, um, maybe too close to their marathon pace for the whole 16 or 18 miles, but they just run one pace for the whole thing. And so I
Yeah.
break it up and I'm like, okay, we'll run a couple warm up miles in the beginning, then maybe do 3 by 2 miles at marathon pace with a little break in between, and then do another 4 miles at the end. And that's like 16 miles. I'm not doing right math, but with the workout would
Yeah.
be like 16 miles.
Yeah.
And then the day after that, or the day after your speed day, those are kind of recovery days because like you're probably going to be more tired the day after a workout. So a recovery run can be even a little slower, but like, it's most likely the feeling that you're going to have after working hard that your legs are a little more tired that day. For the day before a workout, like a speed workout, I'll give strides, something like 4 times 30 seconds, at like a 90% effort. You're not all out sprinting, but like, accelerate into it, run hard for 30 seconds, and then, run jog or walk for 2 minutes and do it again. And so if a typical marathon build, we'll do speed workout, we'll do a long run workout, we'll do like a mid-range long run, depending how many miles they're doing per week. It might be up to 10 miles or it might be like 8, just something that mid-range kind of run, and then a couple easy days to kind of supplement all the training to support that type of stuff. And I think the thing people get lost in all this too is as they want to increase their mileage, they just want to add a bunch of more easy miles, where there does become a point where we still want to have enough intensity. So, if you're someone who runs 40 miles a week and you're like, now I want to do 80 because that's what I've heard is the magic number. Well, A, don't do that because that's too many miles. But like, even if you were to increase your mileage, you increase how much intensity you're doing too, right? So, if that either means your speed day gets a little longer with intensity, your long run gets a little longer, or maybe you add in a second speed day to kind of supplement all those extra miles, because you don't want to do 60 miles a week and like 6 miles of hard volume. Right? That's too little volume of intensity.
Correct. Yeah. There needs to be a balancing act between the intensity and the easy days for sure. And if you are in a marathon training build, or if you're just training in general and you are looking to have and run that higher mileage, like slowly but surely increasing it. And oftentimes it takes multiple training cycles to be able to get up to, if you're running, let's say 40 miles a week, getting up to 50, 55 comfortably while staying healthy. It is a very long term process. I think many people know me as more of like a high mileage runner, but I always have like this asterisk next to it and say, but I have been working at this for, well, since 2019, which is how many years? 6 years now. It takes a long time to build it up. And each year you can just do a little bit more and a little bit more. And it's really exciting when you can kind of take that long term running view kind of approach.
Yeah, and mileage. I was gonna say mileage changes over time too, right? So like your seasons of life affect it, right? And so there was a time when I used to do 70, 80 miles a week before kids. And, I think sometimes that was probably too much for me anyway, but it was sort of working in the moment. And then when I ran my marathon PR, 2.5 hours, I did it on 59 miles a week, which was shocking because a lot of people around me were doing 110 and they were like, how did you do it? And I was like, this is what my life allowed, right? In this moment, if I would have pushed 10, 15 more miles a week, probably wouldn't have made it to the race. I probably
Mhm.
would have burned out, probably would have gotten injured. My life was pretty stressful. And so that's what it needed. And so it's okay, even if you build up mileage, to have changes in your life that affect your mileage. Your big life changes, like when you're moving, weddings, job changes, all those things are times when I sort of tank someone's mileage and say, hey, these are the most stressful things you're going to have in your life. These are our mileage is going to kind of cut down a little bit, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's definitely okay. And it's one of those, yeah, it's a great example of stress is stress, and your body doesn't know where the stress is coming from, especially if it is more of a life stress. With running stress, you can kind of recover through that. With life stress, it takes its own toll. And it's really important to have that right balance between all of it. Um, what would you say to an athlete who maybe they aren't training for something right now. So like does easy running matter to them as much? Let's say they're going out for 5 runs a week and it's more recreational. Some they might push, they might make some progression, but does easy running kind of matter more to that athlete or to an athlete who's like training specifically for like a goal distance?
Yeah, I'd say even if you don't have a goal race and you're just doing base training or recreational training, like it doesn't hurt to have some days you run a little hard, right? And so,
Mhm.
like, even if it's not, if you don't want a structured workout, if you don't want something like I do a lot of time based style workouts, time based effort based miles of my work athletes with my workouts with my athletes. I also encourage sometimes athletes to get off the structure and like go do a fartlek. And a fartlek you can just literally point on your street and go, I'm going to run hard to that mailbox or to that person's driveway, and then I'm going to jog to that dog. And like those are like, you don't need a time, a clock, a pace. You just run hard for a little bit and breaks up the run. Sometimes the run feels a little more fun if you have a little bit of workout in it. So like even if you're just recreationally training, you can just do lighter workouts just to kind of break up your week, and then still have some structure in there where you can kind of have easy days, right? And so, that kind of stuff, it's not taking a big toll on you because you're base building. So your mileage can be sort of normal. You're not kind of taking those big deposits from your training to do hard workouts, and you're just maintaining fitness, but it's still a little fun to do it. And it still then has those easy days still have purpose to supplement the days you do run a little harder.
Absolutely. I love how you broke down the recovery, the easy days, and then the long run, maybe with like some quality work. It's something I still talk to athletes about all the time, even athletes I've coached for years. I don't know if you have that same experience. It's still something that we like grapple with and we just try and like remind ourselves about. But what is kind of like your like what would be your advice to a runner who is running everything maybe in that zone 3? So that's going to be a little bit different. That's more of that marathon effort. Every run is just inching around marathon pace. What would be your advice to that runner?
Yeah, I'd say, some zone 3 is not the end of the world, right? But like, if you are doing it all the time, you're sort of setting yourself back and you will find that your workouts will be harder, right? And so, if you're honest with yourself, right? Like a lot of people finish workouts and they're on their hands and knees laying on the ground and they finish their last rep and they're like, I completed it. Well, for me, the advice I give to my athletes is when you finish a workout, you should feel like you could do one more rep. So if you're putting so much effort out that you have gone 100% in the workout, you're overdoing that workout, and that's going to bleed into the next days, the next workouts. The same thing with easy days. If you're pushing too hard, even if it doesn't feel that hard, because a lot of people think, well, I have to run a marathon pace for 26 miles. So what's the big deal in running it for 5 miles on a Tuesday or 8 miles on a Saturday? It adds up over time, right? And there's no gain, there's not enough gain there to be worth it, right? So like we all can go look at there's tons of science about it. Look at professionals, like look how slow they run on their easy days. We can take a lot of examples from that. It feels harder. And I know people say it's harder to run slower. It's not that hard. A lot of the time it's just ego. We just don't want to see a number on there now that Strava is, such a big thing out there. We don't want to see this easy pace. Look how slow they're going. No one will care when you go blast your marathon and you run a ridiculous time. They'll look at your easy pace and go, wow, you ran that easy and you ran that fast. That's incredible. Right. So don't worry about what people think about your paces in training. Go do what you need to do. So on workout days, you are ready to go. So don't be inching in too close to that marathon pace, that zone 3. Like if an accidental, 5 minutes of your easy day is in zone 3, cool. Like that's fine. Don't be like I failed my easy day or I'm
Yeah.
setting myself back. But if 100% of your easy days in zone 3, well, that's a problem.
Absolutely. And I think it's pretty natural when you're in quote unquote an easy effort day to maybe start that first mile in zone 1. You're just warming up, especially I'm a master's runner and I'm like, that first mile hits different than it did like 5, 10 years ago. Slow, steady, zone 1. You're just warming up. And then the majority of your run could be in zone 2. And maybe, like you said, the last 5 minutes, the last mile. Zone 3, not the end of the world. We're talking about that full 45, 50, 60-minute run, just hitting it hard, feeling exhausted, whether you're on the track doing a workout, which is different than zone 3, but going out for that just duration of time where you're just feeling, more exhausted than when you started the run. And I absolutely love your example, Nick, about kind of that like that Strava piece to it. I'm also a big believer in like, let your Strava be Strava and then blow them away with your race times to be like, I didn't know you could run that fast or whatever the sayings are, because that's why we're doing this, right? I mean, there's so much to training and the process and all the life lessons that we learn. But if we're also racing and we're competitive and we want to see the most that we can get out of each race, that's really the day of celebration, the day to see where we're at and to see those really strong pieces come together. I always laugh anytime someone says to me, like, oh, I can't run with you. That pace is too slow. Because I mean, I'm generally around 2 minutes slower than my current marathon pace for most of my easier efforts, maybe 90 seconds on like a good day when I feel really good. But just recently, I was running with my coach, who is an elite runner, Nell Rojas, and her marathon time or her marathon pace is like right around 5:30. So that's like her marathon pace for like a 2:25 marathon, something like that. And she recently held a camp in Boulder and she was running with us during the morning runs. And we were running at 8 minutes per mile. And I mean, she was obviously very comfortable, very light on her feet, but like she wasn't saying, oh, this is too slow for me. I can't run this. I mean, she stayed with us for the entire 8 mile run and it was awesome. So I think a lot of times that is ego that kind of comes into play. And I think it's ego that kind of comes into play with a lot of this. Like, let's just be intentional with what we're doing, especially if we do have a plan and our goal is to show up healthy and strong on race day. let's just be really intentional with each day that we have and what we're doing. And maybe that day before the workout, we take it a little bit slower. We're not running the 5:30 pace that you were. Then we go in and attack that workout. We leave 1 or 2 reps left in the tank. We feel really good. And then we go back into recovery mode for that next run.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, similar when I ran 5:45 pace, it was like 8-minute pace was my easy
Mm-hmm.
days. I would run with people. Most people would think that's too slow. Like, at the end of the day, I want people when I ran my race to be like, "Wow, you ran that few miles and that slow of easy days and, you ran that time. That's ridiculous." Like that's what you want because then you're doing your training right, right? And people are questioning because a lot of times if you just follow what everyone else is doing, everyone else is just doing what they think they need to do. And a lot of people are trying to rush the process, right? Endurance sports aren't about that. Like there's trial by fire coaching, there's trial by fire athletes who just push, 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 don't stop after a marathon because they don't want to let their fitness come down, even though we know that's not how it works. And like, just keep pushing, right? And run their easy days way too fast, their workouts way too fast. Sure, you might get some results, but if you want to be in this sport for a long time, if you want to keep growing, if you want to see like the big gains that, sub elites, professionals, a lot of your peers have been doing for 6, 7 years, they've been consistent for 6 and 7 years. They've been putting down, the amount of miles that they could. They've been doing the workouts. They've been doing all this. None of it's like, it's not like A quality workouts that they're blowing out of the water. They're doing B quality workouts, but they're doing it week after week after week. And that's where the gains happen. That's where the people make the most progress. If you try and rush things, you end up getting burned.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Part of Nell's camp was also meeting a lot of elite runners, and we met a handful of them. And one of the most interesting things to me when I was like listening to what they were saying, and these were all like either local athletes to Boulder, like who train here, but are sponsored with Puma and Nike, and other brands, is that every single one of those elite runners said two things. They all said the same thing: you need to be consistent with your training, show up. It's the long term game. And then the second thing was taking your easy days easy and be just intentional with the process. So not rushing it. Connor Mance was talking about, not running anything faster than a 6 minute mile for his long run efforts, which, in context, his marathon pace is just under 450 per mile. And so it's just really, really interesting when you kind of hear elites talk about it too, that it's all top of mind for them and they are in it for the long term because it is, I think something that they love to do. It's also their job. It's something that they want to continue to do, just like us amateurs. And I think we can learn a lot from them too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what I've learned over the years. That's the biggest thing I've learned is just have patience.
Yeah, patience is king and queen. Okay, I want to transition into our second point here, which is long-term athletic development. So beyond the next race and kind of like that long-term planning and running approach. And it's something we were kind of talking about in the art of easy running. But I think it's so important to, like Nick was just saying, like athletes can get just caught up in the training and the constant racing and not taking time off and, really just trying to push their boundaries when it comes to running. But I think it's so important to take this sport as more of that long term view. Nick, kind of what's your stance on this and how do you see it?
Yeah, I've had two big tracks in my career. So when I started, I ran freshman year in high school. I didn't know what running was. I wanted to show up to the track team and I wanted to be a javelin and pole vaulter. And my coach said distance runner. So I learned on the fly, and it took me from my freshman year to like my junior year of college to really hit that peak, all my PRs, like finally get through it. And then I stopped, came back in 2010, really started running in 2011. In 2018, I broke every single PR from 5K up to marathon. So again, some little slow moments there for my own ego and slow down, but it took time. It took a long-term investment and took a long-term development. And so, I think a lot of the time what we see on social media is people praising the perfect workout. You do this workout and your VO2 max will go up 4%. And then people read that and they're like, oh, well, if I just do this workout every week, then my VO2 max is going to go up like 1,000,000% eventually. And so I'll be good. Like, there's no such thing, right? There's no, like, what we've learned, if you follow any of the scholars of this sport, is there's no perfect workout. There's no perfect training plan. Because if there was, everyone would follow it. This one coach would be the Olympic trials, Olympic marathon coach every year. His athletes would win every race, and he would know everything. That's how it works, right? So there is no perfect anything. And so when we kind of decouple that and think, okay, well, how am I getting better? Well, I'm getting better by showing up. And so one of the phrases I like to say to my athletes is workouts are about gaining fitness, not proving fitness. That was a big
Mm.
thing for me because I used to live or die, a quarter mile at a time, and I would know all my splits and I would know if I'm off or on, and I'd start getting in my head. And when I started sort of taking that pressure off, that this workout here isn't about running exact paces. Like your marathon, you don't have to go learn marathon pace in your long runs and run every single mile at your exact marathon pace to learn what it feels like. You're just trying to get more fit. You're just trying to get your body in better shape so it can do what it needs to do on race day. A lot of the time, that means running faster than marathon pace. I give a lot of threshold work to athletes in
Mhm.
their long runs. That's harder than marathon pace. It's much faster, 15, 20 seconds faster. But like do it long at the end of the run on tired legs, and all of a sudden you feel so much better and your marathon pace feels a little easier. I love float workouts. Like do a workout where instead of it's an easy recovery, oh my God, let's recover at marathon pace, but do 10K pace, for some shorter reps. Oh my God, now I'm learning that marathon pace doesn't feel that bad at all because I'm using it as recovery. So again, no such perfect workout, long-term investments, getting out of your head about the numbers meaning more than they mean. The idea is that go out, run your workout, be confident that you're running what you can. Feel like you could do one more rep when you finish. The numbers will number themselves, especially as you get through the summer here in most of the country where heat and humidity run rampant. And all of a sudden, we're air quotes less fit than we were before. It's really just the humidity and the heat, right? And so, that people at altitude, they already know that. They run all their workouts slower than they would, but they get to live with that every day. We only unfortunately turn it on for 6 months, turn it off, lose it all, and then have to relearn it, right? Reacclimate. So again, when you get out of the head of your numbers and you start looking at all I'm trying to do is run this workout. This workout looks hard. I'm going to go tackle it. It's no harder than any other workout. I can do it. I'm going to run the paces I can. Another great example is thresholds or tempos. Like people race tempos. You get a 20-minute tempo and all of a sudden they're almost PRing in their 5K or close. And I'm like, well, you didn't run a tempo. You ran a 5K race. Like that requires a different amount of recovery. So, like, again, a tempo means being able to finish it. Like, let's say you do a 30-minute tempo, you should be able to run 30 more minutes at that effort. Can you when you finish, or are you on your hands and knees? Because if you're on your hands and knees, then you overdid, you're overexerting yourself. Again, back to an earlier point, all we're trying to do is we're doing workouts and then we're doing long runs and then we're doing workouts and then we're doing long runs and we're stacking all these runs together. Our body needs to be able to handle the whole training block. Because if you run the pace like you're supposed to, and you run the efforts that you're supposed to, you can handle the whole entire training block and you can gain so much more fitness than you can from one day overdoing it to kind of hammer out some numbers that feel good, or finishing a workout dead. Those things set you back. We don't want to take those deposits. We're just trying to get ready for race day. The last thing I think people don't always know is just how long you hold peak fitness for. There's a reason why peak week exists. Most people hold fitness for 30 days. Their peak fitness. Some people 40 days, like experts maybe a little further, but like that means you don't need to hammer out stuff 16, 14 weeks out for your marathon. Like that's getting you a little more fit, but you're not holding on to that fitness. And if your body can't hold that level for the entire training block, then it doesn't matter. So we do our harder stuff near the end because that's as long as we
Mhm.
can hold that training for and that in our fitness block to get ready. So sometimes you hear people feel flat when they taper. They probably hammered out their hard stuff, 4 weeks, 5 weeks before their taper, and now they're in their taper and they're feeling flat. Don't do that, right? Again, we're building towards the end. We're doing our hard stuff near the end, and we're running the efforts we can so we can get to race day as fit as possible.
Yeah, exactly. You said that so well. And I think it's such a great reminder for runners that when you are in a cycle and this is just going to be a 3 or 4 month cycle out of a 12 month, year, right? We have one full year and then years and years and years on top of that, that we can really progress into it. We don't need to be doing all the hard stuff right away. We get to work our way into it. We then stay happy, we stay healthy, we stay refreshed. We are ready to tackle the race distance and the course on race day rather than feeling, like you said, flat or tired. Or I know I've shown up to a race before. It was the Boston Marathon 23, and I had like two caffeine gels, which is, I usually only take one. And I always bring a backup with me. And I'm like, oh, I might need the second one today. And sure enough, I like took them back to back and I still didn't really feel any like great, caffeine benefits from that. And
Yeah.
I think it's like, oh, yeah, you're just tired, you're run down. It's just too much. What would you say to an athlete who is maybe having a difficult time? Let's say they're newer into the sport, but they're not, I would say they're a few years in, they're still newer to the sport, but they've gone through a few training cycles. They found a lot of improvement and now they've kind of plateaued. So they're just taking every workout, every long run as hard as they can to try and get that pace to like budge or move. And it's not doing that. If anything, it's moving backwards and they're just feeling maybe like they're running a little bit slower because they're overworking and there's a lot of other things going on. What would you say to that athlete and trying to coach them through that?
Yeah, it's not, early newer runners, you do get that very early on. You're running endurance sports new, you usually get that kick. Not everyone, but so like first thing first, don't compare to others because you're probably going to start with a friend or know someone who started around the same time as you, and they might progress faster than you. You might progress faster than them. Genetics, right? So don't get caught up in this person got, here got to ran 3:30 and I'm still stuck at 3:20, 3:45 or whatever. Like that's okay. Everyone's genetics kick in at different times. Everyone needs a certain amount of time. When you hit those blocks, we all do. Sometimes people hit it around round numbers. Like 3:30 is a BQ for a lot of women. 3 hours used to be, I think it's 2:55 for men, but like 3 hours is a round number. When you get to round number paces, all of a sudden you're running from eights for your marathon to sevens. All of a sudden those become big. It's physical barriers. It's also mental barriers when it comes to round numbers, but we all hit a barrier, whatever it is. It could be 3:33 and 27 seconds. And that's just the time we're stuck at for years. What happens is we have to spend a lot of effort to sort of get past that barrier. Our body has hit sort of its physical limit. Our mind is also affecting us a little bit. And so we do a lot of work. I always remember this commercial. I think it was an ASICS commercial. I think it was an Iron Man guy, or he was just running down the street and there were all these like brick walls in front of him. And he'd run up to a wall and he'd sort of pause for a second and then he'd run through it. And then he'd run up to the next wall, pause for a second and run through it. Like that's the example here is where you'll hit a wall and it doesn't matter what it is, and it'll take extra effort. It takes a little more training to get through it. Once you get through it, you watch those runners who, they were 3:33 marathon, and all of a sudden they finally broke it, and ran 3:27. Next thing you know, they're down to 3:20, and they were comparing to someone else this whole time who, maybe broke 3:30 a lot quicker, but that person's been stuck at 3:28 for 3 years while they're blowing past, right? So the thing to think about is the work you're doing sometimes to get past a barrier doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It sometimes means just showing up the same way as before. Yes, the PR is going to come a little harder. Sometimes that's when we jump around to other race distances. I know people love the marathon, but go run a 5K. It can give you some mental boost when you go PR in the 5K while your marathon time's struggling. And also, never forget, the faster you can run a 5K, the better running economy you'll have all the way up to the marathon and beyond. So do other distances sometimes when you hit those barriers because it's fun to chase different paces. It's fun to have PRs, but like give yourself some time and don't get caught in that you're doing everything wrong. We all have barriers, right? And so especially early on, we're going to hit a barrier at some point when our new experience with running and all that new fitness sort of now becomes stagnant and now we're into the muck of training. And so give yourself some time and always think of the long-term gains. Like I think too often we just think of the next race. So we run a marathon PR and the next thing we think of, I want to run this race, this next marathon, 5 minutes faster. It's always the number we pick, right? 5 minutes. And so, as you get older in your career, you PR less. When I hit, 20 years plus in my career, I'd PR once a year, maybe if I was lucky,
Mhm.
maybe once every 2 years. Now it's been a while since I've run a PR. That's okay. But so PRs become less. And so at times it's just about how do you kind of show up and how do you kind of look forward, like really far, right? Like instead of just thinking of the next race, think of 3 years down the road. How big of a number or what kind of gains can you have then if you stack up 3 years of training, right? And then just forget that big goal you have 3 years from now and just kind of show up and do the work and you will progress closer to that goal than you ever think. It's easy to dream like short PRs, short times, like 2 or 3 minutes. It's harder to dream 15, 20 minutes. We don't do that for our next race, but why not think about it for the future and give ourselves 3 years to grow into it? 3 years is always a window I kind of give people. I ask when they start, like, what could you think of you could do in about 3 years? And like I try and get them to dream real big.
Yeah, I love that because there's just so much goodness in that. There's so much excitement in that. And when you kind of give yourself that time, I think it takes the pressure off too of thinking, I have to do something in this cycle. Raced 3 marathons over the course of, let's see here, I guess, a year and a half, which is actually a lot. I like to spread my marathons out a little bit more and kind of transition to speed and all that good stuff. But I had plateaued at 315 or 317. I was like 315, 317, 315. And I eventually had that breakthrough race last fall, and you eventually get there. It's just not really on, it's never on the timeline that you want as a runner. It's always going to be on the universe's timeline of when you're ready for it. Or I'm a big believer in, like, there's probably a lesson to be learned before you have that breakthrough race. And it is very true that, like, the older you get, the more you race, the fewer the PRs come. And but I think it's also really fun, though, and I definitely appreciate them because I'm definitely in that space now of appreciating those PRs when they happen and knowing, like, on that day, and I think David Roche had just talked about this on one of his YouTube channels of, like, I love all the running YouTube channels right now. And he's training for Western States. And he just went into, I believe it was a 50-mile race. And he started that race and he just knew. He's like, those race mornings when, like, your body's just in that groove, everything's clicking, it's going to be a great day. You just have to lean into it because you don't know when those days are coming around again. Hopefully they will, but you don't know how long it's going to take you to get there, and really appreciate, I think, each day, because even on those hard days where maybe we're running the same time or we're running something a little bit slower, but the effort's still there, it is giving us and providing us a lesson that we can then take into the next race.
Yeah, David was my coach for about 7 years, so I learned a
Oh,
lot from the,
yeah. Small
philosophy
world.
side of running and just of coaching, and, like, have that's a lot of my if I joke, like, in sports, there's always a coaching tree. I always joke with David, and I'm like, "I've learned so much from you. I'm taking so many of, like, the things you've taught me and, like, pushing it down to my athletes, and then they're becoming coaches," and, like, so, yeah, he
Love
he
that.
was instrumental in just, like, helping me break away from a lot of these barriers I had with, like, good quotes, or just helping me, like, have fire around stuff, right? Like, he's just really good at all that.
Okay, so what is your top, like, maybe like your top recommendation to athletes that comes from David, or like something that you, like, really share often with athletes?
He told me training is the test, racing is the celebration. And I've
Mhm.
always kind of implored that to race to athletes, like, the week of their race. Like, I'll
Yeah.
just mention, like, hey, training was harder. Like, you showed up for 12, 14, 16 weeks. You did a workout, you did a long run, you did a
Yeah.
workout, you did a long run. Life was hard, things happened. And then here you are, and you've done all that, and all you do is go race, right? So you already did all the hard stuff. Be proud of yourself now, and then go celebrate, right? Just, like, don't let anything define you. You get to control the narrative of your life. So if you choose to make it a good experience, the time can't ruin that for you, right? You can go out there and you can have that great day, you can have that fun, and go celebrate, right? So it took a lot off. I used to put a lot of pressure on races that they
Yeah.
had to achieve greatness before I'd feel proud of them or comfortable. And now, me and all my athletes, I teach them, like, be proud before the race even starts. Because if you wait for your result to give you a proud feeling, you might wait for a long time, and then you're gonna sort of burn out from all these training blocks that didn't give you that time. Now all of a sudden, when are you celebrating? You're not.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true, and it's so important to really be happy with where you are, really celebrate that moment on race day, have those performance standards ready to go, how you're going to show up when you race, all that good stuff. I absolutely love that. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about when it comes to the long-term athletic development with athletes?
Yeah, just give your like I sort of alluded to it a couple times. Just be patient, right? Like, especially
Mhm.
younger people in this sport. Like, I wish a lot of people came in this sport and just, like, instead of, like, rushing through a training block, instead of forcing a race when they're injured, instead of, like, forcing something that's not working out and, like, setting themselves back, they just had patience. Like, if you're in your early 20s, or you're new to this sport, or you're in your 30s, like, and you have to miss a race, miss a race. Like, it's not the end of the world. You're fit. Like, I think people think if they don't, their whole training block is a waste if they don't go out there and run that race time that they've been gunning for. And then the next training block, they're back where they started. It's not how fitness works, right? The overall goal is that we do a training block. And when we finish, whether we PR or not, we're hoping to start our next training block at a higher fitness level than we started our previous training block. And so we do that by having a successful training block where we don't overreach, running the race where we take the deposit. The time doesn't matter. But the next training block, as long as we recover and start, we're most likely in a better spot than we were the last time we started, which then means the next training, it's obviously lower than our peak fitness because we can't hold peak fitness forever, like we talked about earlier, but
Mhm.
it's a higher spot. So then we have a higher ceiling for our next training block. And that means we can push further. And maybe we don't get to that exact number this training block, but then the next training block we start again. And if you keep stacking this with consistency, then you can chase those big times. But like if you go all out for your training block, don't recover, your next training block kind of doesn't start any higher, or you get hurt at some point and you set yourself back for 6 months because a lot of people just think, oh, I'll just keep running. What's the worst that happens? I get a stress fracture. Like I'll just rest and my bone will heal. Like don't do that. Like, but I hear that too often. I
You
hear
don't
it
want
thrown
it.
around like PR, ER, and I think some people are joking and more or not are not
Mhm.
joking. And it's like, absolutely not. Like the longevity of sport requires you to just keep building and being healthy. And we can't stop injuries from always happening. You can walk out your door and turn your ankle, or
Mhm.
anything like that. But like we can stop the big injuries that we know. We can stop the big stress injuries on our body. We can stop the overtraining syndrome injuries. How many runners a sub elite or above have we seen like just disappear from the sport because of overtraining and not be able to run for 3 years?
Yeah.
That stuff sucks. And the problem is social media, no one talks about that stuff because those people have stopped posting because they don't want to talk about it anymore. And we've forgotten about them. And then we look on to the next person who's pushing too far and we're celebrating that until they disappear because the the training it's always in the training log and it will always catch up with you if you keep pushing too hard.
Yeah. Oh, that's really well said and a really great reminder to not only have patience, but to have that variety in your training. The stress is stress and reducing your load if you need to based on what's going on in life. I can think of a few athletes who were, in their heyday a few years ago who aren't running anymore. And it's really sad. It's really sad to see that because the point you made about athletes not running for 3 years is very true. Like when athletes of that caliber or any athlete is going through an overtraining issue, everyone is so different on how they come out of that hole that you don't really know how long it's going to take. And for someone at an elite level who's running 100-mile plus weeks, they're pushing their bodies to, pretty much as far as they can push them. It's really scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those stories don't get told. And so a lot of time it's really just that person disappears and we in the moment you just see someone who's disciplined
Mhm.
and working hard and pushing. And so I just want athletes to like early on in their careers just take a longer window, take like how amazing can I be at the sport if I gave myself a chance to grow into it. And think of like the professional runners who started that window when they were 15 and then 25, 28 they're peaking and they're like running these incredible times. What if you gave yourself 13 years of growth, 12 years of growth, like from
Mm.
20 your mid 20s on? Who knows how high you can fly? But if you rush it, you're going to keep setting yourself back with things all along the way.
Yeah.
It takes time, patience. 7 years was both my windows to hit those big times.
So it took you 7 years to run your marathon PR?
Yeah, so my second window when I came back in 2011 took me 7 years to sort of break all my college and high school times, and then
Yeah.
run my marathon PR that still stands and my half marathon PR.
7 years, people, 7 years. Yeah. All right, let's transition into our third point, which is running shoes and gear. And this is an interesting one because I think there is a lot of hype around the super shoes, all the recovery aspects that are going to make you a stronger, faster runner. There's an asterisk next to this because you still get to be consistent. You still get to train. You still get to do all the things that Nick and I have been talking about over this last hour. Plus, in order for all of these recovery tools and the shoes to work. Am I right?
Yeah, you are. And technology is a part of sports, right? So, you saw it in swimming with the swimsuits that all of a sudden everyone was breaking PRs and they banned them.
Yeah.
And, you can hear people talk about super shoes. There's limits to what the professionals and sub elites can wear, and then there's Puma shoes that look like a pogo stick that are illegal but street legal for everyday runners. And so technology is going to keep advancing. And yes, there is gains. There's a time 2018 when the only super shoe around was the Nike Vaporflies, and that was a tough
Mhm.
time because some people put them on and they'd go run 5% faster, and some people would turn them on and get hurt or run slower, or it just wasn't working for them because it was literally designed for like 7 Nike athletes and then given to the community. Now there's shoes built out for everyone, but again, built out around professionals for the most part, right? Like the shoe companies are building shoes for their professionals. And so they work for runners and there are significant gains, but again, it's not one shoe fits all, right? It's not perfect. It's not going to always give everyone the gains, and there's many shoe varieties. So, you know, sometimes, and there's a lot of research that shows even at slower paces, some of the super shoes don't add up as much
Mhm.
as they do at the lower paces. All
Mhm.
that said, don't forget there was a time in this sport where people ran really, 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 really fast and had no technology shoes either. So you don't have to feel like you have to jump on board and buy 250 $500 shoes that last for one race all of a sudden to like reach your peak. You can just do it. Well, a lot of stuff we talked about in here. And like for a lot of early on runners, like I'd encourage you to not do every single workout in a pair of super shoes and
Mhm.
every long run in a pair of super shoes and every work race in a pair of super shoes. Like you can wear, I like the Saucony Speeds. They're not quite the carbon plate, but they work for me and they don't beat me up as much, right? Because a lot of runners get beat up really bad in their super shoes. Achilles problems are run rampant. It is
Yeah.
literally a carbon plate on the bottom of your foot that puts a lot of tension in certain areas. So, all that said, like, you know, and then there's so much recovery gear, right? And we could talk about that too, but like, you don't need every single recovery tool item. They help. But again, we've gotten by with things that, have helped us. I am a big fan of technology,
Yeah.
but I also don't want people to think that to do this sport they need to spend $5,000 to set up their recovery setup and their shoes set up. And these companies put out these graphics. It's like, here, wear our easy day shoe, our speed day shoe, our mid-range shoe, and our long run shoe. Each shoe is $225. So when you buy a $1,000 shoe rotation, then you're ready to go. Like, you don't need all that to start. Like, we can have two pair of shoes. Like, two is good because you can rotate, and it's probably a little better to have a heavier shoe for your easy days and then maybe something a little lighter for a speed day. But
Mhm.
you could even get by with one shoe, but two shoes, like that's all you really need to do. And it doesn't have to be a super shoe. You can work your way up to them. When you feel comfortable wearing them, pull them out.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I'm such a big believer in the two shoe rotation. Studies have shown that it makes athletes stay healthy in the process of running, and the shoe gets to mold back into its original form. When it takes that day off, it needs a recovery day just like we do. And so that's always like one of the things that I love to talk to athletes about when we first start working together is let's get into a two shoe rotation. I think everyone can wear a super shoe. I don't think pace negates like who gets to wear one, who doesn't. I think if that's something you want to do in a race, go for it. But I think there should also be a really strong piece to training consistently, building up the mileage, building up the fatigue if you're in a marathon training block, working on your running form, all the things that are like more foundational pieces. Because if you're someone who's going into a race or a training cycle and you're not consistent, you're not getting the workouts in, you're not running, consistently at all, and you're putting these super shoes on to think that you're going to automatically just race faster, it doesn't work that way. And like Nick said, some of the shoes don't work for everyone. I've noticed, I had the Nike 4% when they came out for my first marathon in 2019. They worked great for me. I had the Alpha Fly 1, I had the Alpha Fly 2, and now the Alpha Fly 3 doesn't work for me. It's a shoe that I will not wear. I know that. And so it is a balancing act of really sitting down and looking at what are the foundational and fundamental pieces of my training, and then what are going to be the needle movers to take me to that next level. Maybe it's working on sleep first, getting in that quality sleep. And then the second thing could be proper fueling and nutrition around that. And it doesn't have to be a 1-2 thing. You could be working at that in unison. But I mean, the sleep, the fueling, the carbo load, the proper recovery after a run with just the hydration, the fuel, that sort of element to it can go a long way.
Yeah, I mean, and just think of sleep, right? Right, add a couple hours of sleep, and your performance. All the research shows your performance goes way up.
Mhm.
So instead of spending $250 on a pair of super shoes or more, and wearing them for a race or two, and then needing new ones, like you could just sleep more, and you will get significant gains. And then the better you can train, and the higher you can push your training, the super shoes will push you even further, right? So they can't fix everything. They can't fix sleep issues. They can't fix fueling issues. You can still run faster because of them, but like if you fix your basics, if you fix your fundamentals, if you fix your training block, if you fix your sleep, if you fix your fueling, your overall fueling, your long run fueling, you will see bigger gains. And once you get all that done, and then if you start adding some of this technology on top of that, then you could see significant gains instead of like just thinking, oh, I just need shoes and that'll help fix my life, right? Like all the memes say. But like, you know, in reality, like you don't have to jump to those right away. You can fix the little things and then you can see much bigger gains and then work to that stuff because it does add up. And then some people do feel like this sport is too expensive to maintain. And they're like, well, I'm not going to run a race because I can't have super shoes. And so it's like, well, no, like you can still run fast without them. And they're not for everyone. And I remember consumerism of social media right now is that everyone's trying to convince you need everything, right? So there
Mm.
was a time many years ago where none of us we probably had GPS watches and a pair of shoes, and that's how we did all of our training. And we rolled on this foam roller thing, and it hurt. And now we got Normatec boots, we got everything else right to fix, and that's fine. Don't get me wrong. If you want to buy the stuff, buy it, but like
Yeah.
just keep in mind that social media is selling, selling, selling because that's the whole point of it at this point.
Yeah, yeah. It's an interesting, I think, place to be in running right now with all the tools, all the technology. It is really exciting. I mean, we have advancements in high carb fueling now. And I feel like that's such a big needle mover if you're like struggling with maybe what you're spending on a monthly basis with running, like focus on those carbs. I think that's like a huge needle mover for you or for runners. And then the strength training piece to it. The Elevate team gets to use a strength training app called Which Weight, which was designed by Chris Lee. You might know Chris Lee. He was a former, I think, pro triathlete and he works in Boulder, Colorado. And he's such a great person. And this app has been a lot of fun for our team to use because it is kind of that next level. Like if you are looking for, I mean, Chris calls it a 4% return. If you're looking for a return on your investment, spend some time strength training and that could mean starting body weights and then adding in actual dumbbells or a bar or kettlebells or whatever and adding more weight to what you're doing. But strength training is one of the pieces that's going to move the needle the most when you think about outside of sleep and fueling. Strength training is kind of that third pillar, and it's a big one.
Yeah, and just like we said, the fundament like that's another fundamental is strength training. But like no one ever got injured because they slept more, right? But people have
Yeah.
gotten injuries from super shoes because they're not for them and they're pushing too hard on them and they're not taking care of their legs afterwards, right? So those things happen, right? And so again, I don't want to come off as anti-technology. I love it. I love all this
Yeah.
stuff. I do wear super shoes and they're fine. I like them and I do have some technology recovery tools, but like I just think if you don't want to you don't social media makes it like you need all this stuff or you can't be a runner. It's not true. Like you can be a runner with whatever equipment you have. Just go run, right? And so
Right.
it can help, but if you do the right things and you sleep, most people don't get 8+ hours of sleep. So if you do that, you're already way ahead of a lot of people. You're recovering, you're getting more fit. If you eat, fuel your long runs properly, if you eat enough during the week, you're way ahead of a lot of runners. And that's going to help you get more significant gains, than spending a lot of money on these other stuff at first.
100%. The new it shoe right now is like the Puma Fast R, I think is what it's called, Fast R. That is the it shoe. I thought it was supposed to come out June 3rd. We're recording the day before. Apparently the shoe came out last week and now it's sold out. And I mean, it feels like everyone has this shoe. And that's just like, I think, a great example of, is the shoe fast? Maybe. I don't have it. I don't know, but it's great marketing. They're selling out. Everyone is dying to get this shoe. So it is kind of interesting when you take a step back and look at it from that perspective.
Yeah, and then just remember, like, when you walk and look at the professional races, like a different shoe wins a lot of these races too.
Yeah.
So again, like every shoe that claims it's the best doesn't mean it's not helping. They're not. They're obviously professionals aren't running in trainers, but I'm just saying, like the perfect shoe again does not exist, and training beats out perfect shoes a lot of the time too. Because if it was, the same shoe would win every single world major all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. At the end of the day, training wins, consistency wins, fueling, strength training, all the fundamental, boring things that, maybe we don't want to do, but we know we get to do. And then you add the super shoes on top of it. And it can be a really fun day. Nick, thanks so much for your time today. It was really fun chatting with you and, offline. And then, of course, on the episode as well. Is there anything else that we didn't get to talk about today that you wanted to talk about?
Oh, I think that was everything. It was a fun topic. So I like talking about all this stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you so much. Where can our audience find you online if they want to give you a follow and connect with you?
Sure. On Instagram, I'm N Klastava. I host a podcast with the amazing Amanda Katz called Between Two Coaches. I'm at Running Explained. I'm the head coach there. So if you're looking for a head coach or looking for a running coach, I'm available there. We have some great other coaches, and then I do some writing on Substack at N Klastava or maybe Nick Klastava. So those are all the places.
Oh my gosh, so great. You're a busy guy. I know how much work some of those things takes. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Thanks everyone for listening and bearing with me as I lose my voice. I appreciate everyone and I'll see you again next week.